You look around and nothing is wrong. The house is paid for. The children are grown. The work is stable. The calendar is full of ordinary, respectable things. And yet something inside feels heavy. You catch yourself thinking, why do I feel this way if everything is fine? That question alone can be unsettling. Because when life is objectively good, discomfort feels almost illegal. It makes you doubt your own sanity. For many men after 45, this quiet regret does not arrive with drama, but with a low, steady pressure that shows up in the evenings, in silence, or in the early morning when the house is still asleep. It is not a breakdown. It is not weakness. It is a signal that something inside you has changed, while the outside kept moving along the same track. Earlier in life, success had a clear outline. You build, you earn, you protect, you provide. The goals were visible and measurable, and every step forward gave a clean sense of progress, because you knew what you were chasing and why it mattered at the time. There was pressure, yes, but also direction. Effort had a target. Now many of those targets have been reached or at least stabilized, and the engine that ran on necessity and responsibility suddenly finds itself without the same urgency. The structure remains, but the inner fire feels different. This is often where regret quietly appears, not because you failed, but because you succeeded in a game that is no longer the whole story. You did what was required. You carried weight. You made choices that were rational, responsible, sometimes even brave, and those choices built the life you see around you now. So why does it feel incomplete? Because external success answers the question, did I manage? It does not automatically answer the question, did this mean something to me? In your 30s and 40s, survival and growth dominate meaning. You do not have the luxury to examine every feeling. There are bills, expectations, aging parents, growing children, competition at work, and the quiet demand to remain strong no matter what you personally feel. Over time, you become efficient at pushing aside anything that slows you down. You call it discipline. Sometimes it is, but sometimes it is postponed reflection. When the intensity of the climb reduces, postponed reflection comes back, and it does not come as a celebration. It comes as a question. Was this my path, or simply the necessary one? Did I choose freely, or did I follow momentum? These are not accusations. They are signs of maturity. Regret in this stage of life is rarely about one dramatic mistake. It is more often about unlived versions of yourself that you quietly set aside while doing what had to be done. The musician who became a manager, the traveler who stayed local, the man who learned to speak in reports instead of feelings because that was more useful. Those versions did not disappear, they were stored. And now, when the outer structure feels stable, the inner storage opens. This can feel confusing, even frightening, because the narrative you carried for decades was simple. Work hard, build stability, provide security, and fulfillment will follow naturally. But fulfillment is not a bonus attached to achievement. It is a different dimension. Achievement is about results. Meaning is about alignment. When alignment weakens, the body senses it long before the mind formulates it. That is why the feeling often appears as irritation, restlessness, or a dull sadness that has no obvious cause. You may look at your life and think, there is nothing to complain about. And that thought makes the discomfort heavier, because now you are not only uneasy, you are also ashamed of being uneasy. This is where many men turn against themselves. They tell themselves to be grateful, yet gratitude and tension can coexist. You can respect what you built and still sense that something inside you wants a different kind of expression. Regret in this context is not a verdict. It tells you that external order does not automatically produce internal coherence. In earlier years, coherence came from movement. Now it asks for reflection. This shift can feel like loss because the familiar rhythm of striving gave you identity, and without constant striving, You may wonder who you are beyond your function. Function is clear, identity is deeper. When your role stabilizes, the question of identity becomes louder. Who am I when I am not solving problems? Who am I when no one urgently needs me? These are uncomfortable questions, but they are not signs of collapse. They are signs that your inner life is asking to be seen after decades of being secondary to duty. There is also a quieter layer. At midlife, time stops feeling abstract. You realize that certain doors will not reopen, certain physical capacities will not return, and certain versions of the future are no longer realistic. This recognition brings a specific kind of regret. Not dramatic, just precise. It is the awareness of finiteness. Earlier, you could postpone dreams indefinitely because the horizon looked endless. But now, the horizon has shape, and that shape forces honesty. Honesty can sting. You may look back and think about conversations not held, risks not taken, emotions not expressed. And none of these thoughts mean your life was wrong. They mean it was human. The difficulty comes from confusing external evaluation with internal truth. Externally, you might score high. Internally, the metric is different. Internal meaning is not impressed by salary, titles, or square footage. It responds to authenticity, connection, and the sense that your actions reflect who you actually are. Everything can look fine, and still, you can be searching for yourself within it.